Hi, this is Rob. I'm going to be showing you how to do the exercises that go along with the video lesson, percents and equivalent fractions. Are you ready? Let's go. In this problem, we're showing a fraction that has the top and bottom numbers being multiplied by n, a missing number, to get an equivalent fraction, which is 12 over 100. So we need to figure out what number n could be that if we multiplied it by the top and bottom numbers of this fraction, we would get 12 over 100. So 3 times what equals 12, and 25 times what equals 100. Well, we know that 3 times 4 equals 12, and 25 times 4 also equals 100, so that means the missing number n is 4. So we write that as n equals 4. Once again, we have a fraction being multiplied by a missing number. The top and numbers are being multiplied by the same missing number, and we get the equivalent fraction, 50 over 100. So we have 5 over 10 being multiplied by a missing number n and getting the equivalent fraction, 50 over 100. So we need to figure out 5 times what equals 50 and 10 times what equals 100. Well, this one's pretty easy because, these are the same numbers, they just have a 0 at the end. So it's not too difficult to see that 5 times 10 equals 50, and 10 times 10 equals 100. So we know that the missing number, n, equals 10. And now we have a similar problem, but this time our fraction is being divided by a missing number, n. So we need to figure out 60 divided by what equals 30, and 200 divided by what equals 100. Well, luckily this is easy because, 60 is twice as big as 30, 200 is twice as big as 100. So we can see that 60 divided by 2 equals 30, and 200 divided by 2 equals 100. And so we know that n equals 2. So we put that n equals 2. And now we have another fraction where the top and bottom numbers are being divided by a missing number to get an equivalent fraction. So we need to ask ourselves, 40 divided by what equals 8, and 500 divided by what equals 100. Well, we can see that 40 divided by 5 would equal 8, and luckily that works because 500 divided by 5 equals 100. So we know that the missing number, n, equals 5. For this problem, we have the fraction 6 over 10, and we need to convert it into an equivalent fraction that has 100 as the bottom number. And then we need to write it in the percent form. So that sounds like a lot of steps, but luckily the last step is super easy. So, all right, the first thing we need to do is convert this into an equivalent fraction with 100 as the bottom number. So that means we need to multiply both the top and bottom numbers by the same number that will give us 100 as the bottom number. So let's write in our multiplication signs here, and then let's see, what number could we multiply the bottom number by to get 100? Well, 10 times 10 equals 100, so we have 10 there, and we need to multiply the top number by the same number, otherwise it won't be an equivalent fraction. All right, so we do 6 times 10, that equals 60, so that's the top number of our new equivalent fraction. Then we have 10 times 10, that equals 100. That's the bottom number of our equivalent fraction. So 60 over 100 is equivalent to 6 over 10. And now we need to write it in its percent form. And luckily, a percent is just a fraction with 100 as the bottom number. So that means the top number of this fraction is our percent. So we put 60%. So 6 over 10 is equivalent to 60 over 100, and that is 60%. For this problem, we have the fraction 7 over 25, and we need to convert it into an equivalent fraction that has 100 as the bottom number, and then write that in its percent form. All right, so let's start by putting in our multiplication signs, and we need to figure out what number we can multiply the bottom number by to get 100. And 25 times 4 would equal 100, so let's put that in there. And then remember, we need to multiply the top number by the exact same number, otherwise it won't be an equivalent fraction. All right, so 7 times 4 equals 28. 25 times 4 equals 100. So our equivalent fraction is 28 over 100. And now we need to write it in its percent form. And since 100 is the bottom number, that means the top number is the percent. So 28% is the percent form of 7 over 25. And now we have the fraction 8 over 20, and we need to convert it into an equivalent fraction with 100 as the bottom number, and then write that in its percent form. So we need to figure out 20 times what would equal 100. Well, 20 times 5 equals 100. So we need to do that to the top number as well. We need to multiply it by 5 so we get an equivalent fraction. So 8 times 5 equals 40. And then 20 times 5 equals 100. So 40 over 100 is equivalent to 8 over 20. And now we need to write that in the percent form. And since 100 is the bottom number of this fraction, the top number is the percent. So 40% is the percent form of 8 over 20. And now we have the fraction 15 over 300, and we need to convert it into an equivalent fraction with 100 as the bottom number, and then write it in percent form. Now 300 is bigger than 100, so we're not going to multiply it by a number, we're going to divide it by a number. So let's see, so 300 divided by what would give us 100? Well, 300 divided by 3 gives us 100. So now we need to do the same thing to the top number, divided by 3. All right, so 15 divided by 3 equals 5, and that's the top number of our new equivalent fraction. And then 300 divided by 3 equals 100. So 5 over 100 is equivalent to 15 over 300. Now we need to write it in percent form, and 100 is the bottom number, so our top number, 5, is the percentage. Here, so 5% is the percent form of 15 over 300.